And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. On this Monday afternoon, this is Andrew Kraft here. The United States conducted a successful counterterrorism operation against a significant Al Qaeda target. And there you are seeing him. That's a photo of him, Ayman Al Zawahiri, in Afghanistan over the weekend. Of course, yet another photo that we have pictured here with Osama bin Laden. Now, President Biden will make an announcement tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, to address the nation from the White House on this significant operation that took out this key leader of Al Qaeda. Joining me now to discuss this even further is national security expert Hal Kempfer. Hal, let's try this again. We got your audio working. What does this mean, especially for the war on terror? 20 years of counterterrorism operations, and the United States finally got Zawahiri.
Andrew, this is a big victory. It's a strategic victory. Ayman Al Zawahiri was bin Laden's number 2 forever until bin Laden was killed, in which case he became elevated to number 1. He always was, we used to say that bin Laden was kind of the face of Al Qaeda, and Zawahiri was kind of the brains, if you will. He was kind of behind the scenes. When he was elevated to number 1, he became the face of Al Qaeda, but he just lacked the charisma, if you will, that bin Laden had. He would do audio tapes and videos, but he just wasn't as strong, or I should say, as persuasive as a leader of that movement, which from a counterterrorism perspective is a good thing. However, he was also somewhat mercurial in ways, and part of that was the rise of ISIS. That was part of the disagreement he had with al-Baghdadi. Where Zawahiri wanted Baghdadi and the Al Qaeda in Iraq movement to stay very subservient to him personally and to the global Al Qaeda movement. And of course, al-Baghdadi went a completely different direction, stood up ISIS, and of course, ISIS eventually took a lot of territory, announced that ISIS was a caliphate, and of course, put ISIS in direct competition, in many cases in direct conflict with Al Qaeda, and a lot of that was due to Zawahiri's, I don't know if you want to say leadership skills, but the way he did things. That he is still he's the number 1, strategically speaking, for Al Qaeda. He is the number 1 target. He was that problem, if you will, that remaining part of the original Al Qaeda structure, that unresolved business, if you will, was taken out Zawahiri, and now he's finally been taken out. I can only guess at the intelligence that led to this drone strike, but let's just say that there's a lot of work as obviously as a retired military intelligence officer. I have a foot in 2 different camps on this, and I can tell you there's a lot of good feelings throughout the intelligence community that we finally got him, but also in the military community as well, because he's responsible for so many deaths and injuries all over, not just in Afghanistan, not just in Iraq, but other countries as well. And of course, we've seen Al Qaeda grow into a much larger movement than when it originally started, far beyond Afghanistan. Of course, 9/11 hitting our shores, but also in North Africa and elsewhere.
Yeah. Hal, bin Laden was gotten in that daring raid back in May of 2011, 11 years ago. Why did it take so long to get him? Where has he been? Why has he evaded our intelligence for so long?
Well, I don't have a lot of information on this.
Sure.
I'll find out more when it's announced.
Definitely.
But obviously, he probably did the same thing that bin Laden did, which is, I'm assuming he went, dare I say, analog. One of the ways that they avoid getting picked up by a lot of our intelligence capabilities is to simply not be connected in any way. Don't use cell phones. Don't be connected on the internet. Don't do anything. Try to remain very analog. If you look at what bin Laden did, he had a system of couriers. And it was eventually by tracking down these physical couriers that they were able to track it back to where he was hiding out in Pakistan. I have a feeling that there was a lot of things are being done. But the other thing to realize, too, is that Zawahiri has been running underground, if you will, staying off the grid for a very, very long time. And it's difficult to try and run a global organization. And in this case, he's surely been trying to reinvigorate the Al Qaeda brand without doing things that might pop up on the radar, if you will. And I would guess that he was probably doing something where it popped up on the intelligence grid, if you will, of something he was doing. I don't know whether it was online or it was people he was interacting with, or there was something where they just noticed something in imagery, an anomaly, and were able to track it down and get some confirmatory information on it. I'm not sure what it is, but over a period of time, even someone working in a clandestine world will slip up. Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes.
Well, that's a very good point.
With the weight of not just our intelligence community, but you got NATO, you got a lot of other countries that have been looking to take out Zawahiri. That combined network, it's really tough for someone to stay off the grid. I've been expecting this for some time.
Okay.
I think a lot of things, not the least of which, all the problems that you mentioned earlier with the withdrawal from Afghanistan, probably masked some of the activities we were doing.
Okay, and we're going to get to that very, very soon here. But we might not find out, how they did come to, locate him, to take him out. Of course, intelligence sources want to protect, methods and sources there, and for security reasons. So we might not, glean really the key facets of this operation over the weekend. So there has been a $25 million bounty on his head since 2001. In addition, like you said, to planning 9/11, he was also instrumental in planning other high-profile key terrorist attacks that were just so horrible, including the 2000 attack on the USS Cole that killed 17 American sailors in Yemen. He also played a role in the August 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in both Kenya and Tanzania that killed 224 people. Hal, let's talk about how he planned 9/11. We're coming up on the 21st anniversary, and let's take the 30,000-foot view, as we always do here, with you. We're coming up on the one-year fall of Kabul and the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was a key concern from so many critics of the withdrawal, that if there was going to be no U.S. presence there at all, terror cells like Al Qaeda, like ISIS-K, will fester and will grow. Is that what we're seeing?
Well, they probably will. There's nothing really that restrains them on the ground. That's a real problem. And the Taliban, interestingly, the Taliban, which the U.S. went into Afghanistan because they wouldn't hand over bin Laden, and they wouldn't basically hand over the Al Qaeda network after 9/11. They decided to protect them, which is customarily something that is seen in certainly South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East. That's a very common thing. But with that, that got the U.S. and NATO into Afghanistan. Eventually led to bin Laden being killed, but also led to that schism that spawned ISIS. And interestingly, within Afghanistan, whereas Al Qaeda is still nominally tied to the Taliban, ISIS and the Taliban are fierce competitors, and ISIS there wants to take over control of Afghanistan. So actually, it was part of this legacy, if you will, part of this stream that went on, which is now poses the existential threat to the Taliban, and indirectly an existential threat to Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. However, with that said, it's very likely that there were things that we were monitoring very closely, even as we were leaving, even after we left, which may have eventually provided enough confirmation that Zawahiri was where he was located. One thing that a little bit of difference between Afghanistan and Pakistan, one of the reasons they sent in SEAL Team 6 to do a physical raid was a concern of collateral damage in an urban area in Pakistan. I'm assuming, based on what little we know, that that they probably didn't have that same concern with Afghanistan. May not have been in an urban area, may not have been in an area where they had that much concern about collateral damage, and so they went with the drone strike. But certainly, my recollection was drone strike or an airstrike was an option they had considered for taking out bin Laden too, which was about 11 years ago.
Yeah, so we're learning from these senior administration officials that the operation was successful and there were no civilian casualties in this drone strike. Hal, you and I have talked before about, both the Trump administration and the Biden administration as they, took out, key senior leaders in, ISIS, in Al Qaeda, and so on and so forth. But like you and I have talked about, you take out one, but there's someone waiting in the wings, or there's multiple people waiting in the wings, and they just fill that role. They replace whoever was killed. Are we going to see that here?
Well, we'll see somebody fill that position. Somebody will rise up to fill the position, but they won't be Zawahiri. And you can't take away from the fact that this guy was doing this for over 25 years. He was there with bin Laden. He was there at the very beginning. As you mentioned, he was there with the attack on the USS Cole. He was there with the attack on the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Obviously 9/11 and numerous other things that he was involved with. He was, some say he was the operational planner. Sometimes these things are kind of thrown out there a little bit more broadly, but he was actually kind of the more nuts and bolts guy, if you will, of Al Qaeda, the more operational manager guy. And bin Laden was more the visionary, almost like in some ways a spiritual leader, if you will, of Al Qaeda. And so the operational manager guy is who eventually took over. So he'll be difficult to replace just because of his experience and knowledge. I want to say something. We used to, in the war on drugs, we have what we call kingpin operations, where we take out leaders of major cartels, and there'll always be someone who rises up to take over. But a lot of times they don't have the same skills, ability, knowledge, certainly their own personal network as the person who was taken out. And I think you're going to see that same issue with Al Qaeda. They already were having a lot of problems. They have this huge competition going back and forth with ISIS. They've had a lot of challenges in places where they've tried to move into different areas of the world. And they're going to have a very difficult time without Zawahiri being there to basically reconstitute or to expand Al Qaeda operations. I think we should take this as a true strategic blow to Al Qaeda, and also whoever rises up, they also may be a little less skilled at the clandestine art. So maybe we'll pick up on them. And we've seen, certainly we saw with al-Baghdadi and ISIS, that those who came up after him, we didn't have to look as long or as hard to find them. And we've seen some of that with Al Qaeda as well. We take out one person, the other person rises up, but they're just not as skilled at staying off the radar. And we pick up on them, and we're able to basically do personnel turnover, if you will, a lot faster. And that's kind of what we hope with Al Qaeda, with Zawahiri being out of the picture.
Okay, and we have and we thank Hal Kempfer there. We're going to keep him on the line. We're going to keep with this story here.